Yep, all right, it goes on.
It's on?
So it's on now.
All right.
You can turn it off or whatever.
No,
you
we're
want.
ready. We're ready. We're ready. Yep.
Can everyone take a seat, please? Being the hour of 6:03, I'll call the meeting of the Tilton Northfield Water District joint meeting with the selectmen of the town of Belmont, the town of Northfield, and the town of Tilton. To my left is Chair Ruth Mooney of the Belmont Select Board, Selectman John Pike, Ron Cormier's not here. Selectmen of the town of Northfield, the Chair Kevin Waldron, Bob Southwick, and Wayne Crowley. To the right is the town of Tilton's Board of Selectmen, Pat Constantino is the Chair, Peter Fogg, Selectman, Catherine Dodson, Selectwoman, John Scanlon, and Joe Jessamine, Selectman. To my right, I'm Scott Davis, I'm the Chair of the Tilton Northfield Water District. To my right is Commissioner Arthur Damas, Commissioner Roland Seymour, and our Superintendent, John Chase. The purpose of this meeting is, and I'll just give a little summary of it. The Tilton Northfield Water District was upgrading our wellhead protection to a GAA. We had to go in front of both the towns of Northfield and Belmont to have the governing bodies sign the application. We went to the second attempt over in Belmont, when we went in front of them. There was some discussion about the actual teeth in the GAA and what you actually can do with the GAA. And there was some discussion from the selectmen to the water district that it would be nice to have a joint meeting of the three towns. We all have a very vested interest in the aquifer. There's no question about that for safe drinking water. And so there was some discussion that it would be nice to have a joint meeting to talk about further protections that we could talk as a group for positive in the future for the 140 corridor and that would protect the aquifer, that area. I know Selectman John Pike brought up the possibly addressing the state with some type of an earth berm on the side in the event because there's so much traffic on that road. If you had a tractor trailer or something that was to flip over, that you could have an incident where you have a large fuel spill that could do as much damage as anything to the aquifer. That was one suggestion. Another, and we put down a few on the sheet that's in front of you. Monitoring and limiting the amount of salt that DOT uses on that corridor is one thing. Extending the best management practice inspections. I know Belmont currently does them. I don't believe Tilton does, and I know the water district doesn't. I don't know about Northfield. Do you do any type of inspections like that? Okay. So to try to extend those practices into the other two towns. It's being done now in Belmont, but we're not doing it, I believe, in Tilton Northfield. And any other thoughts and enhancements that could be had. I know through the GAA, we hope to work closely with all the three communities, but not only with Belmont, where they're already doing the inspections. Hopefully our superintendent can work with them to see what they do with the inspections so that we can get up on our superintendent can be involved with those inspections and understand and have a clear understanding of what goes into those inspections. Another, and I'll just bring this as a start to what we're here to talk about, what we can possibly do in the future. One of the concerns that was raised to the water district is with, through the wastewater division of DES, there's a pressurized sewer line that runs down 140. It was probably, how long ago, a year and a half ago? Yeah. In the last 2 years anyway, they had a break, had a failure on that line, and it was, the sewage was pumping up into the ground. And when DES wastewater division showed up there, they brought out their emergency plan. In their emergency plan, it did not even have the water district as a contact. So maybe one thing we can do as a group, as a body, is ask the state for their emergency plans, review those to make sure that the proper people, such as in Northfield, Belmont, Tilton, and the water district, are being contacted. when we have an incident. And, you know, that's just the one thought that I can think of right off the top. And I want this to be a positive thing, so I'll open it up to the bodies that are here. If they have any thoughts, questions, concerns?
One thing I was thinking of is that we've had pretty good response from Senator Husband. All right, we've asked him to come to Belmont on 2 or 3 occasions. He has come, and we actually have some future projects that are on the list to road projects to be done. So definitely, to me, he's a good source, and might be a person to see if we can get some response from him, whether we send a letter, whether we, you know, because to send something to the highway department asking what can they do on 140 to, you know, help protect the water, the aquifer, I don't think you're going to get any response. I think you're going to have to, unfortunately, go to a higher than just maybe go to the highway department. DOT, thank you. I mean, that's just a thought. Again, at least he has come, and we've had a fairly good response. That's one thought.
To go along with Ruth, he actually had an issue on 106 where they thought they were going to build a new state fueling station. And they came forth with their plans to us. It's a pretty wet area on 106. The highway's the only piece of 106 that hasn't been upgraded between Concord and Laconia. We complained a little bit. They came back with another guy, and we complained a little more. Finally, we called Mr. Osmond. He brought those people and their bosses out on a Friday afternoon at 4:15. And this gentleman who makes the plans, he said, let's walk out with me and stand beside the road. And he wouldn't do it. He ran around the road. He wouldn't do it. I'm not standing out there. Look at this traffic. You created this entrance, we did. And that was a 10-year plan. It was going to happen 10 years ago. And it's going to get fixed this year. So he really pushed the boat. And my one issue as I look at it, I think that this aquifer, unfortunately, is the mouth of the river. We're lower than the lake. The lakes all come down to Silver Lake and it filters into this aquifer. No one has ever suggested to the state that we have a low salt area between Tilton and Laconia. Rather than use salt, maybe we use gravel. Maybe it's a little messier. When we pour salt on that exit 20 and all that whole area, we've overbuilt. We actually, it's been overbuilt. It's pretty crowded. A lot of cars, and they still keep coming. They keep building, pushing the envelope because it's proximity to exit 20. And I think the salt's a real issue to protect it. And again, a berm may not be the answer. I'm not an engineer. But I think our immediate danger is if somebody flops a big oil tank truck, God forbid, into that causeway, if you would, and that's really what it is. And I go back to, we had a bad fire last week. And in talking amongst the towns, we had a man here from the state tell us that they launch boats across the street from Rowell Septic. I've never seen a boat launch. I've seen a boat launch down on Shaker Road, where they've got a boat launch and canoes, but I've never seen a boat launch. I've never seen anybody put a boat in that swamp. But he was convinced because he thought somebody might have been camping out there because that's where it started, because there was a question as to the probability of whose fault and who was going to be expensed for the fire. That man was convinced that was a boat launch. Now, he couldn't have spent much time in Belmont or Northfield because they said we try fishing there, some up that little culvert, if you would. I guess they color, Rich. And I think that's where we have to go. They don't, it's there and they don't see it. I don't think the people see it. I think the people who drive over it, they don't see it. And, you know, and the expansion of buildings, that's coming. And it's come on both sides of the line. People are coming that way, the highway's bringing it. But I think we have enough mandates to control the buildings. We've certainly, our planners have done a great job that way. We have permits for asphalt plants. We've got an asphalt plant on the end of 140. And I think those people are so scared of polluting that they're gonna spend more money to keep their sites clean, that you know, they're not gonna ruin their own land. They don't want to, that's not their intent. It's not like 50 years ago, don't worry about it, it's all over the side. I think we do have to have a consortium of towns, go to the state and say, what can happen here is disastrous. Not only for us, that water's going south. It's going southeast, it's going south, it's going down that river. We gotta do something. And I think if we get together and put something, and maybe the aqueduct company is the tool to do it. That's the link between the towns. That's the one issue, I mean, that's the one issue. They are the link between the towns. Yes, we don't get our water from you folks, but we are getting the water from the same aquifer.
I think it's the aquifer, John, is the link.
Yep.
It's the link.
But I think if we, all three towns, get together, form a triad, you people be the contact people, because, and if you need our planning, of course I put Candy on the bus all the time, if you need our planning department, we're here. But that being said, I think that's one of the issues we have to do, and we have to get it politically involved, and I gotta say, it's Mr. Hosmer. I wouldn't have said yes or no, but I never looked, but the man got results. He really got someone to come and look. And yes, we're gonna do it, yes, no, we're gonna do it this year. And I think that's a plan that we have to, there are engineers and scientists and road construction people who know far more about what would happen, or what we can do to keep a tank truck. But that road, just dump trucks that carry 300 gallons of fuel. We lost a coke truck, for whatever reason. We were so lucky that didn't cause a problem, but, you know, we're lucky it didn't.
I was thinking, wasn't there a year or so ago, wasn't there a cement truck, I think, that went off the side of 140? It was just before it kind of opens up. I mean, I don't know if it lost anything, but it was, I think it was in the spring and it was soft and it ended up off kind of on the side.
Doing the senator approach, we have, what, who represents Tilton for the Senate?
Gene Forster.
Gene Forster, and who represents Northfield? Who's the senator representing Northfield? Huh?
Andrew Hosmer.
Oh, Dean Hosmer has Northfield and Belmont?
Yeah.
I thought you might have three, that's the only reason I was asking. So we have two senators. We have two senators that represent the three communities.
DOT courtesy of contacting them first before we stick senators on them.
Oh,
yeah.
I think so, Cal. I think it's a step approach.
Yeah.
We start out at this level, and as Ruth is saying, you see what you at least put them on notice at this level, and then you have to move up.
Maybe the first conversation should be what district is 140 in? Is that District 3?
Yeah.
Still, or does it change?
Doesn't it change at Franklin line?
I think you're right.
That probably is District 3.
So it's District 3.
But
I think we should start with District 3.
I think it's not only the DOT. The DOT with the salt issue, yes, and with the road conditions. But then, like I said, we've got that, we have major sewer lines going there also. I mean, we have that big interceptor coming down through Tilton, right?
Yes, I think it would be easy enough to give them contact information.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I think with the DES on the wastewater side, I think it would be prudent for us as a group to look at the emergency plan to see what it entails, who the contact information is within it. Because if you have an issue, whether it's in Tilton, Northfield, or Belmont, you want to know that you have the issue. And if you're not on the contact list, you're not going to be contacted. You might hear through the grapevine, but you're not going to be on the front line being contacted.
It's an interesting question because that's come up in other places. The coast has a lot of, the coast of New Hampshire has a lot of emergency planning that goes on. Our staff that do response are given maps that show public water system well. They don't necessarily see the sewer lines running from or by because there isn't highly detailed digital data for every town for their sewer lines that we have access to. But it's an interesting point that your system wasn't notified, even though probably the fire department was involved, the police were involved, and when we're contacted, it's usually through state dispatch. So state dispatch gets a 911 call, it's an environmental emergency. The person on call at DES responds. They call our bureau if they think there's a water supply issue involved, and we respond with, with information about what should happen in terms of shutting down a well, and other types of responses. It's not uncommon though, and I think if you look at your own emergency plan, a lot of emergency plans at the system level have a template that they're supposed to complete. And I think looking at the notification process is very key to those issues. And just a couple of things about DOT.
Pierce, let me just, hold on. This is Pierce Rigrod from DES. That's some reason.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Pat.
Man, at least
Sorry about
see
that.
it that way.
Yes, Pierce Rigrod
My last name
from
is
DES.
Rigrod, R-I-G-R-O-D. I'm in the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau.
Yeah, sorry about that, Pat.
DOT has a policy for low salt applications. If your concern is also about trucks going off the road, their response is going to be salt melts ice. So there is potential, I don't know if they have equipment to do this, to apply brines, which they do in certain parts of the state. They'll put brine down first as the storm is approaching to limit icing on the road, which requires less salt afterwards. They've shown it reduces their salt use by 20-25%. But the trucks are expensive. They need a place to store the brine, so it would have to be a district-free shed. But they're doing that, I believe, in, I'm not sure what district number it is, but up by Plymouth. And they've done it all in the Niagara corridor.
And what's the reason they're doing it in Plymouth, Pierce?
There's a large the public water system in Plymouth is in the globally practically, and so they have fluoride issues. And so there's been a series of things they're doing, and share reports with you from the systems consultant about how they're approaching salt reduction, but it isn't. It's a secondary contaminant, so it's an aesthetic. It's not technically regulated. It's above 250 milligrams per liter. You're going to experience taste issues, and it's corrosive. So if your system, it's not good for water systems because it ruins equipment. But I think the idea of emergency response and having this report, which was written over 10 years ago, Frank Claremont raises the same issue. There's a truck that could go over on 140. What are we going to do? And I think for chemicals, most chemicals, like oils and things, it's not really that. Diesel doesn't have this viscous enough that you're going to go immediately down 40 or 50 feet. You're going for other chemicals that might be. It's a different story. But most chemicals traveling through here, it's going to be. It's certainly a risk, and I think it's worth coming up either with a response, a specialized response plan, including what DES can help you with, which is we get contractors on site to remove material quickly. So if it's there for 3 hours, and then we're scooping it out, we're only going down 10 feet hopefully before it hits the water table. So those are things we do all the time that our staff as well, the waste division staff does every day. But I think I was going to suggest actually, and I mentioned it to Scott at the beginning, that I think it's really great that you guys come out on an evening and are going to spend the next hour or so talking about this. I think it would be useful to set up a process where you're going to not just talk about it tonight, but spend some time occasionally getting together, not all of you necessarily, but at least representatives from each town, and discuss this in more detail as you go along. So, when they did the Regional Planning Commission helped generate this report, I think they could be also a partner in having group meetings, facilitating discussion. They're right in the middle of things that deal with land use controls and zoning, which is one of the things that came out of that report, which you've done and updated. And they've been bringing other partners with respect to DOT and emergency response that I think are pretty important. And chemical management. There are chemicals that DES doesn't regulate a lot of chemicals. You may remember in 2014 there was a release in Charleston, West Virginia that shut down their water system for 9 days. Those were not petroleum products, so they were not regulated under state law, and they were essentially the only requirements that they really had to report them through the Emergency Community Right to Know law, which is a federal act, and all that requires is they send a listing of the chemicals that they have on site so that emergency responders can respond properly, that people understand what's in the tanks, which they failed to do. And they failed to notify the water system, which was a mile and a half downstream. So the point I'm making, though, is that chemical management in an area like this, where you may have somebody that's using chemicals along with an inspection program, is a pretty important tool. You need to know what's on site, what its human health and drinking water concerns are, and how to manage those and make sure that people that are here are doing that, or the people that move in as new development are doing that. And you can set that up through your planning and zoning laws. So, I'll stop because I'd rather you guys talk, but I think there are some really good, I think another swipe at a regional effort would be a great idea, and it doesn't have to be the planning commission, just bring them up because they happen to be involved first regard.
Thank you, Bruce. John, nice to go. I think everybody knows that I'm John Scanlon, and I'm a state of New Hampshire full quantity hazardous waste coordinator, certified by the state. I also work in the industrial park down in Hudson, New Hampshire, and they have a great system down there. All of their businesses, once a year, get inspected. The town of Hudson, along with the fire department, they go through all of their industrial businesses, and they find out all chemicals that are on the site, how much they have used of all those chemicals, and how many of them have gone down the drain, and how many of them are manifest to get disposed of. By having that list, you can find some of the acute chemicals, you can find some of the caustic chemicals, and that, find out how they dispose of them. There were a couple times, I know in Massachusetts, where you had a company that was doing stampings of metal, which get plated with the cadmium plating and that. And the chemicals that they use are caustic, and they were putting them down the drains. Well, that seems fine, but what happens is it dissolves through the sewer line, and it slowly starts leaching out into aquifers and that. And over a 10-year period of time, you don't notice it happening until it's too late. My thoughts were that it would be nice to go and define an area that we want to, start with, and any of the industries in that area, identify them, and get them on a one-year plan where we have a representative from each of the towns that will go in, get a copy. We have, where I work, we submit a list of all of our chemicals to them, so they have them. They go to the fire department on the SDSs so that if there was a response, they would pull it up and find out what's in that place. At the same time, we go and ask for a copy of all their manifests so they know what chemicals were shipped off-site from there. And if there's any that weren't shipped off-site that are in there, where did they go? A lot of times behind closed doors in some of these industries, there could be floor drains, there could be other things that actually aren't even connected to the sewer or anything. They go into like a dry well. And it's easy for somebody to take plating chemical, cleaning solvents, and all that, and just say, hey, we'll put it down the drain. These things all happen behind closed doors, and if we don't have an inspection system, and we don't have a system for checking that, we'll never know. So to establish an area that we are going to protect, whether it's the actual boundaries of the aquifer or something that we make up, create a committee that will do the inspection. This be part of like the fire department, maybe health inspectors from each town, or something like that, and go through these different industries that are within that area once a year and see what's going on inside the buildings. Those are the hidden threats. We can see when a truck flips over, we can take care of that. You don't know if some of these guys have been doing it for 5, 10 years, or even 20 years.
Okay, John. Just to clarify, the only community that's doing any inspections is Belmont, right? You're doing.
What do you
What did I ask? Candace?
Yes.
And how often is that done, Candace?
Right now, they're being done every 2 years, except there are a certain number of industries that get done every year. And we basically do exactly what the description was. We use the DES checklist, and we've added some additional questions for the water department. And we do those inspections, and we make the appointment, we do the inspection, and the records are.
And who does it for you, Candace?
Code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer. And we all have code enforcement officers in all 3 towns, right? Yeah, I think it's, I agree with you, John. I think it's something that's something that we definitely can move out to all 3 towns. We all have industries in all of our towns that we could be checking on, that are over the aquifer. There's no question about that. I guess you don't know unless you go in there to see what they are using for chemicals. Now, they have what, NSDS sheets, John, is that what they have?
SDS now,
SDS.
and the manifests, what they're disposing.
Our staff also took the DPS training. They do free inspection training. They'll come up to your community and train wherever you want to do it. And I think we have 4 staff members trained at this point, and we've had it twice.
Now, how many facilities do you think you inspect?
There's almost 100 that we go through.
And now, how do you identify those chemicals?
We have a business listing that we use. The fire department has a business listing that they keep for a different reason. We put them all together. We did windshield surveys. We did, I know somebody's doing something there type location. And we add to it and take away from it. Some businesses are put on a 5-year rotation because they just have nothing. They just do nothing with regulated substances. So we ask them to let us know if they change, and we pretty much know that in your own community anyway, so we go back on a less frequent rotation for those businesses, just to make sure they haven't picked up some use or substances regulated.
So that's something DES did the training for your people?
Yeah, they did. They offer that, and they'll come into any community free of charge to do that. And you can do it one of 2 ways. You can take them right out into a business and have them do the training for you, or you can have them train at your DPW or your fire department because they're going to run into the same or similar uses there. We did ours in our DPW and our fire department only because we really didn't want to ask a operating business to allow us to bring DES through the property, even though they said, we're not there for enforcement, we're there for training. So we've gone back to them a few times with questions and got some additional. And we also added some of our BMPs are more stringent than DES's.
Now, are firefighters trained in Belmont? When you say you went to the fire station, do you have personnel from the fire department? Because as you know, we have a district in Tilton Northfield for the fire district. And as far as identifying those in case they go into a building, because that would be another thing. If they have a fire, what kind of chemicals are they dealing with in the fire?
We've been very lucky. Our 2 code enforcement officers have been firefighters, so they provided that link between our inspections and the fire department.
So they have that knowledge on that side. Because this is, as we roll this out, the more I'm thinking, in Tilton Northfield, we would probably want to get someone from the fire department involved too. Because not only do you have a hazard as far as a chemical hazard possibly, but you could have a huge fire hazard also, depending on, I don't know what they do for inspections.
In Tilton, we already coordinate code enforcement officer and health officer and Captain Javale, the safety officer from the fire district. We already, when there's an inspection, the 3 of us go together.
Now, do you respect what John's asking for about chemicals or anything, Kathy?
No, we haven't.
So you don't have a list of the chemicals that are in those buildings?
No, we haven't done that yet.
And
We
we-
have to.
And you haven't taken this training either?
I don't think so. I've taken a lot of them, but I don't think I've taken that much.
It's something that we could look
I
into.
actually coordinate that training, so
Pardon?
I coordinate that training, so
So we're talking with the right man.
I actually do the training.
Does Northfield do any of that, Wayne? Anything like that, going into any of the businesses to see what chemicals are being used in any of the businesses?
Not by the town, only by the fire department for what they do.
I'd be surprised if fire departments,
Yeah, they do a little.
they have, back in the 80s, we had this,
So they might have a master sheet that we can start with then, Kevin.
I'm sure it's on, maybe part of the fire software. I know that when we approach the building, we knew what was going on in there, what was in there, what the hazards may be.
I think the one point you think you're kind of looking is that having a small business, having to combine with some of the regulations, my liability insurance company, they're there more than the town is. I mean, they come in, and they do an inspection, and they're, carburetor cleaners and that, and they were already giving her a metal cabinet 2 years ago, and now that's gonna be a metal fireman cabinet.
Yep.
And they
Just for that instance.
Yeah, it's just for that, they come in and they say, here you go, we'll be back in 3 months, get a cabinet. So because if your insurance, that's what they're gonna come after, they're gonna come after the insurance company if there's a pollution or abuse of disposing improper methods. Even tires, when you do your tires, here's the receipts where the man comes and they have to take care of the tires. It's not Joe Felice with a pickup truck. It's a company that's got a federal number that comes and takes it. And, okay, what do you do with your cans? We crush them, okay? Where do they go? Best way, okay? How many? We estimate 5 pounds a week for empty cans. So your insurance companies are after this too. And when the health inspector, if you would, Mr. Bateman came by and he asked a question, right? What do you do with this? This is our list that we gave the insurance company. Here you go. And he gives the fire department, because he distributes that, so they've got an idea whether if this thing catches fire, whether this stuff's gonna blow up. But it's all right, it's a ball, you're right, it's to get that ball together.
Yeah, because we're not doing it in Tilton, right? Selectmen?
No.
We're not doing that in Tilton.
No, we haven't.
And we're not doing that in Northfield. So it is something that we definitely should look into. As far as starting with the training pairs, number one, and the water district would be involved in that too, if we want to be involved. It's beneficial to us, there's no question.
Once you reclassify,
What's that?
once you reclassify, you're authorized to enforce the same rules that we're talking about.
Yes.
You're inspected, so you can either toss it to us or you can enforce it under state law.
I think I'd rather have it done locally, to be honest with you, and that's what we're hoping to do. Once we get that reclassified, to work with all the 3 communities, and work with Belmont, also. Not that we're in Belmont, but we have our drinking, our groundwater protection areas in Belmont. So, Pat, do you have anyone else have anything? Questions? Thoughts? John, that was a good thought, too. Anyone from Northfield? Wayne, do you have any questions, or?
I believe that Mr. White is on something as a one-time commercial truck operator. I tell you that once you leave the town of Northfield on 140 headed towards Belmont, the road becomes a road. It gets narrow, there's no breakdown lanes. Flop up.
Really?
Fuel tank, 10,500 gallons, or 100,000 pounds off either side of 140.
Right beside where you drive by, you see a well, right there, the road turns.
Big road. And you can follow it all the way into the intersection of Main Street, Belmont. I tell you personally that with 38, 45, 48, or 53-foot trailer, that is not the most fun going in the county today. Once you, that road, goes uphill, goes downhill.
It's gonna get worse because we're gonna put a toll.
Kevin, are you talking about what John's talking about, the berm, or are you talking about widening the road?
I think the road should be flat
You're not saying, only saying the berm, but also widen the road.
Yes, it's not going to run, it's not steep enough hill. Because they have some place to try to go, and I think most of the, you know, talk about businesses, I do believe that most of those corporate citizens over there are highly responsible corporate citizens. And I don't think they're doing anything intentional, it's going to.
No, we're not saying anyone's going to do anything intentional. What we're saying is it's just to have the peace of mind if we inspect, we know what's there, and we have a peace of mind saying to the general public that yes, we are doing our best, we're being proactive as opposed to reactive to a situation.
You know, actually, I actually thought maybe this back for is to extend down.
I brought a map, and you know, Belmont is a very large part of the aquifer, and I don't know if everybody can see it or not. But, you know, Tilton and Northfield also has aquifers, you know, which, you know, this is Tilton, this is Northfield, this is the Belmont one that comes up to where we get our water from. But when we were talking about joint inspection, the towns, you know, it's not only this aquifer that we need to worry about. I think, you know, we need to worry about the other ones that are in this area for the future. You know, because someday we may need these ones, you know, and so those inspections, I think, are, you know, where we can get code enforcement to help, you know, and manage these, because, you know, some of these aren't within the wellhead protection area that we're, you know, so concerned about right now, but they're over here and here that we may need to do.
Does it extend to the area of a school? Or is it Hurricane Road or is it?
Like, this one is over towards J. Jill 132 in the highway. This one is over towards the high school, middle school area. This one is down by Sandalgate Pond. And you know, these are the ones that I pulled up today just to kind of show you that we're not just looking in this area or where Belmont gets their water from. You know, there are other ones that we need to be worried about in the future. Kind of where I thought, where I had it, you know, maybe we need to, like Belmont does, you know, do a town-wide inspection on these sites.
I think it'd be important to look up river too.
Go
Go look up river. Water runs downhill, boys, we're in the bottom of it.
Right.
Go to New Durham, go to Alton, to leave Alton, and start down toward the drainage of the Mary Meeting Lanes and all that. That's lake water. You tell that Dr. Any well drill and you want to drill a well down in South Alton, they don't like to do that with that deep well because those big boulders that shoved out of the lake when it was tapped out with a drill well. They're not right. We're on the other spectrum of that.
Do you have any industry, Church Street,
Yeah, right, Kevin, where Mrs. Sturgeon property is up there, we have a, before zoning, we do have a number of them up there. Which is just when they came before us, make it a liquor warehouse. I guess the liquor commission was talking about subdividing, they're on sublet, subdividing is the wrong word, sublet, and have these independent truckers call to a point and go to the liquor stores from there. And they came before the board and then they left, and then they came back, and then they left, and we haven't seen them. Now they go back.
They can't with a petition amendment. They
Okay.
can't until after the petition amendment is acted on.
all of these are
Because we had a man petition that no, don't believe we got any actions. So that right now, that's not
these two ones.
If you haven't noticed, the state at 104 and then also Plymouth, that goes to liquor stores, I think the ones on exit 20 are small. And
This is where,
that little, that big, something,
that's not good. I think this is.
Is Northfield,
No, right here, I think this.
I know that's their economic corridor down there. Have they looked into extending the sewer line down there any further, or developing that as more commercial? It's been brought up over the years
intent is to put the sewer from Rowell's over to the interceptor in Tilton. To add another line to do that, not to use the existing line, to add another line. And they're actively looking at doing that.
Going from Rowell's, what, cross country through
Not cross country, right along 140.
the, right down 140, you know?
Down 140, so you can pick up all the businesses
Yeah.
on 140 and potential development of that land, both sides of the road.
Yes, okay. And that's kind of below the power act, the one,
It's
half
right
and
there.
half.
It's right there.
It's right there.
Is that moving forward? Because-
We're attempting to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a, $1 million project.
Maybe you coordinate that with the water and the sewer.
Water's on board, sewer's on board.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we all realize that, you know, we're gonna have growth within the community, so no question you're gonna stop that. If we would survive, it would stop that, whether it's Belmont, whether it's Northfield, or whether it's Tilton. But I think what the goal of this group should be is that we're putting the practices in place that give us the best protection that we can, such as the inspections, as Candace has said. I think that that should go out into Northfield, should go into Tilton, that we're out there, that we get people certified to do these inspections. And I don't know, Candace, the one question I'd ask, and maybe Pierce, you can answer this question, is, are you limited to how many times you can inspect? Can you inspect everyone every year if we wanted
We can
to?
inspect as often as we want. And as I said, he will go in, we have a certain few that he'll go into when he's passing by, and it'll be more than once a year. Otherwise, right now, we're on a 2-year rotation.
Now, what if you, and I'm just asking this for a question, what if you find a violation, how is that handled?
When we first started, we found a lot of small things. And what would happen is he comes back, you write a letter, and you say, your regulated substances have to be in secondary containment, they have to be undercover, they have to be, all of your cabinets have to be marked, you can't put it in unmarked drums. We list whatever was outstanding, and he'd say, it was always done. And he'd have that conversation with them on site, and I'd say, I need 2 weeks. And they'd call us, and we'd go back out and inspect it that right then. We'd get them compliant, and then we thank you very much and go on our way and come back the next time. I think we were all pretty surprised at how compliant people were when we got there. And 99% were just more than willing to do the common sense things, and these are pretty much just common sense. And once you get them into the rotation, every year we go out, there's just fewer and fewer and fewer. And we certainly had a couple of businesses that I can think of that never got inspected in the first year because we just went back and back and back, and they just didn't want to be inspected. But we worked with them. We had 2 really good code enforcement officers, and everybody is now being inspected. Everybody's on the rotation, and it really gives you a great opportunity to develop a rapport with your businesses. They know the face. If they need something else, they just call us up. They'll call us up for taxes. It had a lot of benefits besides one.
So like something, what a community service also that you provide.
I mean, when Steve's there, they'll ask him other questions. I'm thinking about putting a door in here or a wall up here, and he'll go through that with them. And we've really gotten a lot closer to our business people through this process, and it's well worth it. And we wondered when we began, because we weren't going to take on an extra cost.
Yeah.
But we haven't, and it's worked really well, and it's got a smooth rate.
Is that, Pat, just to the Board of Selectmen, Tilton first, is that something that our current code enforcement officer can have the time to do? No? Just doesn't have the time? Or
Not until we have it higher.
would we be able to extend his hours, or no?
Townspeople.
But I mean, I guess I'm asking, where would we find the, from Tilton? And then I'm going to ask the same question in Northfield, so you know what's coming. Where would we find the individual from Tilton?
I'd be the health officer, full-time position.
What's that?
The health officer,
So,
full-time
yeah,
position.
they do the current health officer. That's where we would find it, the time. And in Northfield, Kevin?
Well, that's a good question, because we have a part-time code enforcement official. I think they already do inspections.
And unfortunately, they're not, I didn't even think of inviting them tonight, but, yeah, I'm seeing that too, yeah, when Nick, she was talking about having just the training alone at the fire, then light one on, it was too late by that time.
I understood. Yes, but you can have an inspector as well. This is.
We are, well, John will be our inspector, there's no question, we'll probably put all of our personnel through the training,
You would be.
definitely.
You also would be another. But I think it, I don't know, is it best to have multiple inspectors? Is it best to have one or two?
Again, do you work with more than one individual when you do an inspection?
No. The code enforcement officer usually does the inspections. We did cross-training because it's a lot easier for us in the office to deal with these calls, to do the paperwork, to write the letters. If he has to do it all himself, that's too much work. It was too much added time. And it gives us backup. And if Rick Ball is out doing a site inspection, he can understand what he's seeing that's happening on the property as far as regulated materials. So it just gives us, if somebody's out sick, we don't miss that, we don't put that business.
So you don't go out of the site, in other words, if someone's out sick, it still, the schedule stays
Still
on.
put somebody out there. We also had a, 1 year when we didn't have a code enforcement officer because of illness, we hired an outside contractor who lives in Belmont. He did an awesome job. He really did for someone. He had the background and he had the talent and he did a really good job.
I have a question, and I might be the elephant in the room.
Well,
I'm not really familiar with a lot of the DES regulations and so on and so forth, or the past practices, but I'm kind of down and dirty, simple kind of person. If we develop an inspection person, and we have one from each town going in there and inspecting not only our businesses over the aquifer, would that eliminate or bring aware of violations that are happening currently and in the past? And there are some businesses that are in violation and have been in violation for a few years. So as an inspector, if you know that, how are we as a group of inspectors from each of the towns to go in there and correct that kind of problem? So how would we go forward in a positive manner to do that?
where we haven't been doing it, I guess I'd have to refer to Candace. How do you handle when you go in and you find a violation in a business? That's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, if I mistake what
That's
you're
correct.
asking. If you go in and find a violation in a business, what's the protocol from there? How are they notified? What is the procedures that are put in place to correct that
We
violation?
have a representative of the business right there during the inspection, so you can have that conversation with them. You point out right there what the violation is, and you point out what can be done to solve it, so they don't just get left hanging. We write a letter, we outline the violations, we tell them what section of the ordinance, what section they're in violation of. We tell them to either give us a call or we'll be back in 2 weeks. Whichever, some of them work better one way and some of them work better the other way. And we go back. We have the normal enforcement techniques at our disposal. It's part of the ordinance. They're required to have the inspection and they're required to meet the best management practices, the way we wrote our ordinance. So we never had to go further than maybe one more trip to that. John's right. I mean, business owners, some of them get lazy. But once you bring them into compliance, they work pretty well, and they do. They've got their insurance guy behind them, they've got DES, and one of the ways that we broached the subject was, we're going to come in and we're going to inspect you. You're still subject to all of the same regulations for DES, but when they come knocking on your door, you can show them the confirmation letter we gave you that you are in compliance. People like that. They would rather work with a local enforcement agent than a DES person. And that's just human nature.
So they get like a certificate
Yeah, you
And
give them a
it's
confirmation letter. Yeah,
that
you
they
fill it out.
that they've been compliant?
Absolutely, they can take that to their insurance company, their bank, when they remortgage, the bank always wants to see those papers. Worked in pretty well.
So that's something that's unique to Belmont, because we don't have those practices in Tilton, and you don't have those practices in Northfield, right?
It sounds like Belmont's enacted ordinances to give them some teeth.
Yeah, and I think this,
Sometimes it gives you gums with no teeth.
Well, I think our three ordinances are pretty similar.
our ordinances are similar,
They were, I mean, they were all adopted as a result of the tri-town.
of this year, so they were all,
We all participated in the tri-town.
so we have, we're just not enacting. Is that what you're saying?
They're very similar, whether or not they're exactly the same, I'm not sure. But all three towns had new ordinances in 2008 and 9.
They've all been the rumors were saying, I was on that original tri-town committee, and the ordinances are the same. The teeth are as good as what the ordinances are written, and they're written in a manner that allows for inspections. That's written right in the ordinance, so we don't need to do the ordinance.
Okay, so we're all set with the ordinance on on our other two towns?
I think we can do it very easily.
Okay, that's good, thank you for clarifying. Do you have any questions, John? No, John, do you have any?
I strongly believe that where we have an aquifer that's we're all depending on for water, that any businesses located within that aquifer should be inspected altogether. If one town's ordinances aren't cutting it or aren't doing it right, no one is, you could have, you know, you could have people doing violations for years and years and years based on the type of inspections that are done. To have that one area outlined that we're protecting the water, where the aquifer, where everything flows into, and have one entity that will inspect those areas, be much more protective of our water system.
Candace, is the documentation that you have put together over the years, is that something a packet could be put together for the Tilton North?
Forms and so forth?
Yeah, the forms and everything, so that you wouldn't be reinventing the wheel, you'd be able to see, because we had nothing like that in Tilton. As far as any of those forms.
The town of Hudson has a really good one. They have a very...
Is that something you can get a copy of? Yeah. Because in Northfield, you don't have any types of...
I'm not in the process of forms.
No. Because I listening to everyone talk, I think that is probably the first step, one of the first steps we should take. I think there's multiple steps, but I think that's one of the first steps, to get all on the same type of inspection. Because you know, for you inspecting Belmont, and if Tilton or Northfield's not inspecting, and they got a you know, they've got a violator per se, it's not going to do you any good, right? I mean, if we all don't get on the same, board.
For communities.
Yes.
To commit to that type of an effort. It's not, we were very, very generous, the selectmen allowed us to do that, but it's not an easy thing to be undertaken, to commit to go once a year to, I mean, Tilton was like a huge number of businesses.
Oh, I don't think it's going to, I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
No, I just didn't want to leave the wrong impression, that we didn't know how to do it, we didn't have the forms when we started.
Yes.
I mean, it's something we developed, and we did work with DES on that, and I'll send out a copy to everyone.
With trial and error, I'm sure.
Really, and every community is going to want something different. But I'll be happy to send them out in electronic form, so you can use them and change them and go to work.
Just give you a time frame. So we have several hundred systems that do the type of program that you're talking about. And we tell them every 2 years. So if they're in a particular program that requires inspections, they can space out their inspections over 3 years. So we have a lot of businesses to do 12 months, 36 months. So 1 year is actually really, Belmont's at the top of the committee.
I just speak as one commissioner. I mean, the water district's more than willing to take the lead on this as far as getting it up and going as far as if the towns are interested in it. We're going to commit a certain amount of revenue of our resources to this because it's very beneficial to us, no question. I mean, we have one source of water within Tilton and Northfield for the public supply. We will start to look at a second source just because you have to. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. So therefore, it's very beneficial to the water district, Tilton Northfield Water District, to have a program, to have as much protections in place that we can. And that's what this is. So for the Tilton and Northfield, I mean, the water district will take the lead on that. The board of selectmen will know that. And we'll work with peers to work on trainings and so on and so forth. And we'll probably have all of our field staff be trained. I just think it's the right thing to do.
So just to interject, you know, most people are not going to know what we're talking about, right? So
I know they're not.
So there's a real educational, it's sort of an afterthought, but getting out front on education and telling people why you're doing it, why it's important, what it involves, and we have some materials you can use to kind of put it out there for consumption would behoove you to.
It's no different when we start the backflow prevention program. It's no different when we start the cross-connection program. I mean, you have to educate the public, and that's what it'll start. It'll be an education thing, but we'll get our men trained so that eventually we can have the whole program rolling. And, you know, I don't know, when we talk about the fires, I don't know what they're going to have for resources for even towards this, Kevin. That's the only concern I have through the budget process. And the same with Tilton. I mean, this year, it's going to be very, you know, to start anything, you've already put your budget together. So, but at least we can start. I think it's one spot we can start. I think the other place that we can start is, as John said, to get together and get some ideas and try to get legislators on board that's the only way we're going to get anything done by the state, is possibly eventually through the legislation. I mean, unfortunately, it's the way it works.
It's like what Tilton was correct, when we started sending a nice letter to District 3 and saying, hey, can you help us? Yeah, that'll be in the 10-year plan. 10-year, I think 10-year goes with teachers. I don't think 10-year doesn't go with the state. Then when you get that letter, you kind of get cold feet about it. Then you come up with a day, and you talk to the two people, it's Forrester and Hosman, and both, because they're both very powerful people in the state. And I think that's a win-win situation, and say, this is what we have here. And especially if we put a water line down that road, because sewer line, excuse me, and then you're going to disturb and stuff. If they're going to do a project like that, let's look at the whole thing at once. And the town line is going to come into Belmont, as you said. And that road is beat up pretty bad. I think that's something that has to happen. I think to me, it's an immediate problem. That's a problem that we live with every day. And I just hope it doesn't come true tomorrow.
Pat, has the town of Tilton, where we have Road 3 run right through it, have you ever had a discussion with DOT in regards to salt use and so on and so forth?
We've had some, but we're no salt in our aquifer on our local roads.
But on the state roads, I'm talking, on Road 3, or has there been any discussion with that?
A few years ago, we had a conversation with them. They weren't willing to drop it, particularly up in the past Maple Road area because of the accidents. That was probably 2 or 3 years ago. Particularly up in the Silver Lake area where our aquifers, that's been deemed a very high-risk area which they're about to change. So they're not willing to change to those in that area.
Wasn't there a salt shed down there at one time? 140?
There is a shed.
Oh, is it still a salt shed?
There's a shed on 40.
Candace?
The DES actually is partnering with UNH, and they have what's called the Green Snowboat program, where they will certify your town to be a low salt habitation. say right on the website, there's just an incompatibility between safe roads and water quality. It's just inherent, but as in most things you do.
So you're saying like the town of Northfield, if you had a low salt area, they would look at using something like this?
Well, I think if you're going to approach DOT, you ought to approach them with their own program and say, now, wait a minute, you have a low salt application program. How about using it in your state highways where it's applicable?
They also recommend. Our highway department is certified that there's no, that program, green snow program.
That's a training, so it trains people how to calibrate spreaders and properly make sure you're minimizing the
Part of that program also recommends that your companies that do, your construction companies that do winter maintenance, like your landscaping companies and things like that, they also can participate in that program, and it's beneficial to them as well to be trained for the same program. The other thing I wanted to offer is each of the communities here has a representative, not so much the individual towns, your sewer commissions have a representative to the Winnipesaukee River Basin Program, in which you could certainly express to them the need for the Winnie's emergency operation plans to have contact information for the Tilton Northfield Water District. I think that would be very critical to them. I sit on the advisory board, and I certainly will pass that along to the administrator of that, Sharon McMillan. But that's something that you really should get your sewer commission people to ensure that that's happening, at the level.
Is that happening, Peter?
You want to ask Commissioner?
Most of the sewer commission is here
I'm going to ask one of you too. Is that happening in the sewer commission?
Right there.
Yeah, I know. Is that happening in the sewer commission?
Joanne is a representative.
We can chat for some
I'll talk to Joanne tomorrow.
That, and to have to see who's on for the emergency contact. Thank you. Northfield has a sewer commission also.
We do.
Oh, yeah, tons of meetings.
Are we on share? I mean, are we on your?
I'm not, but Landis is the contact. I'm sure when they got phone numbers, contact, yeah. And we have gone to several meetings with Winnipesaukee over the years.
But I guess my question would be is and as I asked Tilton, is the actual sewer commission in Northfield, if they were to have a leak, are we on their contact list?
It's a water district, yeah, just to know that they can be by tomorrow.
I'm just saying, it's
Well,
better.
that's progress, Scott. That's progress. Yeah, that's progress. Are we done? Sewer,
I think the goal, I would like to see of this group, and maybe as Pierce said, not the whole group maybe, but we can have the whole group if that's accessible to everybody. It was hard to put a night that we all could attend. We had one from Belmont that couldn't attend, unfortunately, but it makes it difficult. We all have busy schedules. We all have multiple meetings. So it's hard for all three boards to come with a night that works for them. But I think the goal I'd like to see, or the Water District would like to see a goal of this group to have a meeting to start out with, to get things rolling, maybe midsummer, if we could have another meeting, and we'll try to put some type of a letter together with some ideas, and then we'll send it out to the town administrators, to the three towns, and so we'll go through them, and we'll have some ideas, and we can send it back and forth, add to it, delete from it, and put our thoughts, and it comes in front of the boards of selectmen when you have your meetings. The boards of selectmen can add things to it, and we can come up with some kind of a draft letter that we all can agree to, and then we can sign it and send it on, and then hopefully middle of the summer we can call for another meeting where we can get together and see what our next steps, and see what progress we've made till that point. But I think the sad part is, as Pierce said, that program got put together, what, 10 years ago, did you say? At least. And has there been a meeting since that actually got put together, Wayne? Of the Tri-County Protection, Tri-Town Act?
Well, the Tri-Town Act for purpose was to get the three towns to have similar ordinances in place to control that. That was done, it was passed, and that committee disbanded.
Okay. So now we'll take it the next step, to impose the ordinances that are within it.
Do we all know we have similar ordinances?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Yeah, he says they're all the same.
Okay.
We want to adopt the same. So that's at least a good start,
Yeah.
that we've got that. Does anyone have any ideas, questions, or concerns, or? Okay. Oh, sorry, John.
What's the name of that training?
Well, it relates to our state rule, which it's called ENPWG 401, which is the rule.
Yeah, thank you very much.
ENP's for groundwater protection. So it's the rule, that's the training, that supports the rule.
And that's that goes over the inspection.
Yeah, we go through the rules, we go through the enforcement process, we go through the
Do you know how often that's offered?
on demand.
On demand?
Let's get one of those. Let's get one of those.
Yes, I don't know if we
Yeah,
could get that.
the Water District will take the lead on that. We'll send something out from our office to everybody, to Northfield and Tilton, about picking a time. It's good to have some type of that training, at least get the training behind us, so we know what we're looking at.
If we could get that before the summer, you know.
We will do that ASAP. Candace?
Well, you have a program too, that Candace, code enforcement officer, could, it might be useful to do the training and then have some cross training. The inspector that does training all the time, but other inspections too.
Yeah.
Candace, you had a question?
I only wanted to point out that we recently, staff members of the southern communities that are in the Lake Winnisquam watershed area, recently had a meeting at Lake Region Planning Commission to talk about the water quality in Silver Lake and Winnisquam. And we've all been sent back to our boards and commissions to ask for their support in moving forward on doing the watershed management plan for Winnisquam and Silver Lake. It's surface water, but it's fed by groundwater, and it certainly makes its way down through our communities, and it affects our tax base, our economy, our businesses, and our residents. And I would hope that everyone would have a chance, as they talk to their staff people, to learn about that and to perhaps allow us to move forward with Lakes Region to simply lay out what a plan would be, to put some in it, and it's the same effort as we did with the Tri-Town, but this time it's the watershed of Winnisquam, because we need to control what happens on the land in order to provide that water quality. I mean, you get a lot, and it's the same top-down theory, where it's the bottom of the Woonsocket and the river, and it comes down, and the silt and the phosphorus and everything that comes out of Turkey Brook and Black Brook and all the rest of them come in and affect our water quality.
Now, what are the 7 communities, Candace? Sorry, what you
Belmont, I talked about the other Belmont, Tilton, Sandlerton, Meredith, Laconia,
We weren't even
Hampton.
And I don't think that was
Tilton,
a
Carolinas.
I'm a planning commissioner, maybe they should write a plan.
The board is saying they weren't even notified.
The Board of Selectmen isn't aware of it.
No, I thought, as your staff people have a chance to come to you, that I would hope that there would be support for water quality.
Definitely, Tilton's got a vested interest for sure.
So,
Darrywood.
How long we have to Plymouth? They got an idea.
The watershed.
Yes. You have to get it.
That's right. So
But no,
Just
we definitely support that. I mean, if we have to, if we don't keep our lakes clean, we're fools. There's no question about that. It's a resource we're not going to get back. If we don't. Does anybody from Northfield Board of Selectmen have any questions? Bob? No, sir. Kevin? Really? No questions, huh?
The new meeting.
2016. Anyone from Belmont? Who is it? No? Huh?
Who's that?
What time's dinner?
You think they'll for supper? Tilton, do you have any further questions? On behalf of the commissioners of the Water District, I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen for coming tonight. Also, the town administrators that are here and representatives from the town. Pierce, thank you very much. Being the hour of 7:15, I will adjourn, call for an adjournment of the meeting.
I'll second this.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. I will let you know. Yeah.